Hello, this is Frank Falvey with Frank Presents, and today it's my great pleasure to welcome Daniela Masters with Aging Well. Welcome, Daniela.
Thanks so much, Frank. Nice to be here.
Daniela, how did you get into the healthcare area?
That's a great question. So I am a licensed independent clinical social worker, and I have always worked with elders and their families. So I started out in long-term care facilities, rehab facilities, working with families there. Did a little bit of work in the assisted living community, and then I worked per diem for about 10 years at Milford Regional Medical Center as a clinical social worker, medical social worker there. And I really enjoy my time working with the aging population and their families. And I was feeling like those roles that I had all those years were just kind of like a Band-Aid approach to what was happening. I didn't really get an opportunity to really get to know the elder, get to know the families. I didn't feel like I was really able to impact their lives in a positive way. So I started looking at different avenues to be able to do so. And I came across the Aging Life Care Association and realized that I could start my own aging life care management practice where I could work directly with elders and their families. So I started that in 2018. And again, my office is located here in Franklin. And it has been fantastic. It has been fantastic. So I've really gotten wonderful experiences to work with many elders and their families and really promote wellness for them. The goal is really to increase everyone's quality of life as much as possible. And that can be done in very little ways or in big ways, but that's essentially the goal. And yeah, it's been a wonderful opportunity.
That is great. I noticed that after your name, you have some letters.
Yeah.
MSW,
Yeah.
LICSW, and CMC.
Yeah.
Could you tell us what those stand for?
Yeah, the MSW is my master's in social work, which I received from Boston College many years ago now. The LICSW signifies that I am a licensed independent clinical social worker. So I sat for all of the exams that needed to be taken to get that certification. And I keep up that certification with CEUs every 2 years that I need to produce to get some additional education, additional training. And then when I started the care management practice, I took the exam to be a certified care manager. So that too, I have to maintain a certain number of continuing education credits, and that is every 3 years that gets updated. So constantly learning in the process as well.
In a broad spectrum.
Broad spectrum.
Broad spectrum.
Absolutely.
And the Aging Well advocates, aging and advocates is a very important part
Yes.
of the name.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little about that organization?
Yes. So I am the owner and president of Aging Well Advocates. I do have a nurse care manager that also works with me, and I have an assistant that also works with us. What we do is we work with elders and their families in helping them to navigate the challenges of aging. Typically speaking, it is a family member that will reach out saying that they either have some concerns about their loved ones or a crisis has occurred. And there have been some changes that have happened, and now everyone is a little bit more anxious about safety in the home, or, what do we need to do to keep mom or dad in the environment that they want to be. So we get involved in that capacity. So we, unfortunately, we are not covered by any insurance, no medical insurance. There are some individuals out there that have long-term care insurance policies, that some of those have a caveat for care management services, but other than that, it is a private pay service.
All right. So are you a private company?
We are a private company.
You're a private company.
Yeah.
The reaching out, I can see occurs mostly when something happens.
Right.
But I'd like to point out in this show how important it is really as you're reaching some of these milestones, 65, 70, 75.
Absolutely.
That you really should start talking and planning. And how do you advocate for that?
100%. Absolutely. So, I mean, that is the ideal situation, right? To educate people as much as possible to realize that you want to get ahead of this. Because I think we all do think about things like this, but they end up at the bottom of our to-do list because we always think, well, you know, I'm fine now. Nothing's going to happen to me, so I don't need to worry about it. The problem lies if a crisis does happen and you don't have some of these documents in place, that it becomes difficult. So the documents that I'm talking about specifically are your healthcare proxy, durable power of attorney, and something called a MOLST, which stands for Medical Orders for Life-Sustaining Treatment.
Okay. Let's take the first one.
Okay.
Medical proxy.
Yes.
Okay. First of all, my generation, we knew we had to take care of our children. Okay.
Right.
I mean, that was a given. But when I had to make decisions for my mother and father, I was really shocked, and put it mildly, I wasn't a happy camper. I didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
My brother was in Hawaii. I'm the only one around. I don't have a choice.
Right.
So looking at that situation, is that a common situation for families?
Very much a common situation. And that's why it is so important to have the conversations with your loved ones to do a healthcare proxy. So what is a healthcare proxy, right? So a healthcare proxy allows an individual that you choose to make only medical decisions for you on your behalf. However, the part that people don't understand, they get very anxious about doing that. They feel like, if I do that, then I can't make any decisions for myself anymore, which is completely incorrect, okay? The healthcare proxy has to be activated or invoked in order for that individual that you named as your proxy to have any decision-making powers. Okay. So how does it get activated or invoked? Right. So sometimes, I'm just going to give a very basic example. Urinary tract infections. As you get older, urinary tract infections can become much more dangerous for people.
Really?
Yes, and they can cause very significant cognitive changes.
In both women and men?
In both women and men. So, for instance, when I was in the hospital, we saw this all the time. Someone would come into the emergency room and very confused, a little bit agitated. And, you know, after testing and whatnot, they found out that it was a urinary tract infection. Well, during that time period where that individual is very confused because of the urinary tract infection, the physician can decide to activate the healthcare proxy. Because in that moment, they do not feel that the individual is capable of making appropriate medical decisions on their behalf, on their own behalf. So they activate the healthcare proxy, which would then give whoever that proxy is the authority to make those decisions.
Okay, let's take a step back for a moment, right? In deciding to have a healthcare proxy,
Yes.
right? You have to decide who that person should be.
Yes.
Okay. Now, actually, you can have a healthcare proxy without even telling the other person, which is not a particularly good idea.
Not a good idea.
Not a good idea.
And you can have two people on the proxy. You can have the main proxy and you can have an alternate. If you aren't able to get a hold of the first person, you have a second. You don't have to, but you can.
The other thing that I keep hearing is you may seriously want not to have a relative as the healthcare proxy, and you may really want to look at someone that has some medical association with medical terms and degrees. Am I right or wrong?
That's your personal opinion. That is your decision to make. So some people, when you have several children or siblings, what I usually try to tell people is I really want you to think of what you want for yourself in terms of what your medical wishes are. Who do you think in your life is going to be able to follow through with your wishes? Because that's the important part.
Well, to follow through, you have to have some sort of relationship and dialogue with the other person.
100%. Yes, that's very, very important. So when you complete a healthcare proxy, you really should talk to the individual that you have named and have a conversation with that individual. I would like to name you as my healthcare proxy. Are you comfortable with that, first of all?
Before you sign it.
Before you sign it. Are you comfortable with that? Because some people will say, I'm really not comfortable making those decisions, right? And then it's really important for you to say, these are my goals. This is what I want. In this certain scenario, this is how I would want to be treated. In this scenario, this is how I would want to be treated. Are you comfortable making those decisions for me?
And you can actually write out some of that to a degree in the healthcare proxy or supplement or
you can
page to it.
You can. So the
other thing that you can do, I imagine, is have it in your iPhone, the healthcare proxy.
A copy of it? Like a picture of it?
No, yeah.
Yes.
I mean, and is that legal? I mean, does that jeopardize the proxy?
No, as long as the proxy's done legally. Everything has to be, completed legally. It has to have two witnesses, and the two witnesses cannot be anyone listed on the proxy.
You have to have two witnesses?
You have to have two witnesses.
And I understand you actually have the form.
We do.
So if someone...
There's a Massachusetts form. It's very, very basic. If you Google Massachusetts Healthcare Proxy, it will come up. That is a legal form. You can print that out.
Yeah.
You can complete it. You just need to make sure that you're completing it appropriately.
The other thing I was shocked by is I always thought that when a medical emergency arose and there was no healthcare proxy, none, that as a husband or my wife, I would make the next decision.
You would. The doctors would do everything in their power because no one is telling them not to. That's also where the MOLST comes into play. But again, that gets a little more complicated then.
Well, my understanding is I don't have that power. the doctors legally have that final decision.
The doctors
power.
will legally have that final decision.
I don't have it.
You can give your...
Suggestion.
It really depends on the doctor. It really depends on the doctor that you talk to. You know, some doctors very much will come to the spouse and say, this is what's happening. What are your thoughts? Well, first they should always ask for a healthcare proxy. Is there a healthcare proxy? Yeah. If there is not a healthcare proxy, they should say, what are your thoughts? This is my medical opinion of what should happen. But again, they should also then ask for if there's a MOLST. So depending upon what the situation is.
I wouldn't, well, what is a MOLST? First of all, I wouldn't expect you to have one. But
I don't have it with me.
No. What I'm saying is, if you don't have a healthcare proxy, I don't think...
You don't think you're going to have a MOLST.
I don't think people are going to have a MOLST.
Right. So a MOLST is actually something that your physician should address with you, because it needs to be signed by a physician.
Okay.
So again, if you're able to Google this, if you look up medical orders for life-sustaining treatment, you will get the MOLST. And it asks questions like, do you want to be resuscitated? Do you want to be intubated? Do you want artificial nutrition or artificial hydration? So if you have already completed something like that, then your wishes are known. If a emergency occurs, if something significant occurs, let's say you've had a stroke. You've had a stroke, and the doctor's saying, we need to intubate you because you're not able to breathe on your own. If your family is able to produce this MOLST, which says you don't want to be intubated, you have completed this when you were in your right mind, and a physician has signed it, that emergency room doctor will listen to that piece of paper, your wishes.
Okay.
But if you don't have it, they are going to do everything in their power.
I just want to get across to the people watching this program. You as the husband or the children, without the healthcare proxy, do not necessarily will they ever follow your directions.
Right.
And if you have a healthcare proxy and you don't agree with the doctor's decision or your proxy's decision, you actually can go to court and have that reviewed.
You can.
Going on to power of attorney. So we're going from medical to money.
That's right. Medical
Okay.
to money. Exactly.
And tell us about the wonderful power of attorney.
So the power of attorney is a little bit more complicated. Like the healthcare proxy is very simple to complete. You know, you can print it out yourself. You can complete it yourself. You don't necessarily need an attorney to do that with you. You could, of course, and if you do have an attorney do it with you, then you can list out very specific things that you want or don't want, okay? Durable power of attorney, you can also print out, but it's going to be a very, very, very basic form. I would always recommend using an attorney to do a durable power of attorney, not only because you can be very specific with whatever assets you do have in your life, but it also then needs to be notarized. The durable power of attorney needs to be notarized in order for it to be legal.
Okay.
So that is an extra step that you would need to do.
But the durable power of attorney is addressing financial.
Correct.
If you sign a durable power of attorney, they can make financial decisions, write out checks, do a lot of financial
Yes.
stuff
Yes.
without necessarily knowing about it, and without necessarily consulting, but it's like a fiduciary.
Yes,
You have to act in the interest of the
that's right.
client.
That's right. However, just like we talked about the healthcare proxy
Yeah.
needing to be invoked or activated,
Yeah.
the durable power of attorney has the same thing. So just because you complete a durable power, if you completed a durable power of attorney today, saying, do you have a daughter? Yes. Saying, my daughter is my durable power of attorney.
Yep.
You are of complete sound mind right now. Your daughter just cannot go to the bank with her durable power of attorney
And make
and
changes.
say, I'm going to take out all of my dad's money today. She can't do that.
Right.
Okay. And I think that's what scares people a lot. They feel like if they do a healthcare proxy and a durable power of attorney, it immediately means that they now have no decision-making authority. And that is incorrect. It is incorrect. These forms are in place almost as an insurance policy, right?
Right.
You hope you'll never have to use them, but if something happens, you need to have them done.
The I kind of want to go back to the beginning about aging well
Yep.
advocates.
Yep.
As you age, okay, there's certain things you can't do every day that you used to be able to do.
That's right.
There are certain conditions that you run into, okay, and all people do not age the same.
Correct.
I've noticed that throughout my whole life. I had a payroll clerk that was over 72 and collecting Social Security and was at the same job for over 50 years.
Wow.
She was my payroll clerk, right? So you need to recognize ahead of time these steps, and this is where your services really come in.
That is part of what our services do, of course. That is a section of what we do. So any case that we get involved in, any case that we are hired to participate in and service, that is one of the things that we address almost immediately with the family and with the elder to make sure that all of these are all called advanced directives. So this umbrella of advanced directives is your healthcare proxy, your durable power of attorney, your MOLST. They fall under that umbrella. There's also something called a living will. I just want to talk about it very briefly.
Go ahead.
A living will allow you to write out, just like you were saying before, write out exactly what it is that you want to happen in your life and what you don't want to happen. So it's almost like a narrative, okay? It's a wonderful thing to have because it's like giving a gift to your healthcare proxy because you have basically written out every scenario and what you would want to happen. So that person doesn't have to really make any decisions for themselves. They're looking at what you have already written out and they're acting based on what you've said. Okay. So that is also a wonderful piece to include under this advanced directive umbrella. The thing I need you to understand is that in the state of Massachusetts,
A living will isn't legal.
correct, a living will is not, it does not hold water. So if you only presented a living will to the doctor, they should not act upon the living will. Should not.
Right. The when the services, I recently installed a stair lift.
Uh-huh.
Okay. At the time and still now, I have no idea whether that was a good investment or or a good decision or not. But they're not inexpensive.
No.
There is a place here, right here in Franklin, which shocked me, that sells stair lifts. And you know, I went over, saw them, purchased. But is that the type of things that I could have gone to you and said, you want to evaluate
That's
my wife?
exactly right.
Do you want to evaluate? And because it could be in 6 months, her condition
Correct.
could change.
Right. So that is exactly correct. Right. So that is absolutely what we do. Once we are hired by the family or the client, one of the first things that we do is go to assess the client in their environment, wherever that may be. Sometimes it's in the home, sometimes it's in assisted living, sometimes it's in a skilled nursing facility. It depends. So, but that is one of the very first things that we do is we go and do a thorough assessment. So not only is it a thorough assessment of the client in terms of what are their functional capacities, what are their cognitive capacities, we go through medications, we go through insurance, advanced directives, but we also really assess the environment that they're in.
But you have access to the medical records?
We get a release of information as part of our welcome kit. When someone wants to sign on with us, we send them a welcome kit, which includes a service agreement. It includes a release of information so that we are able to speak to any physicians or any outside agencies that are involved with that particular client. And then we also have like a 7-page family assessment. So we really try to get as much information as possible prior to even going into the house to see the client. But as you know, someone can look one way on paper, but totally different when you go to the house and see them. So during our evaluation, we take all of this into consideration. We go through all of these different options, kind of. And then at the end of that, we write up all of our recommendations. So we touch on all of these different areas: legal, financial, the supports that are involved, functional, cognitive. We address all of these things and we'll write it out for the family and say, this is my recommendation. This is my recommendation. And sometimes we'll even include links, like if we're recommending a particular piece of equipment that would be helpful from a safety perspective, we'll also include maybe a link to make it easier for the family if they want to order it that way.
Well, Daniela Masters with Aging Well Advocates.
Yeah.
Okay. I know you're not in the financial area. You're in the medical area.
Right.
Okay. But I was at a seminar that you were also at and asked a question. Your wife is deteriorating. Okay. You're comfortable, financially well off. But it looks like possibly what's running through your mind is at some point maybe you or her are going to need long-term care. Long-term care is big dollars. Big dollars.
You're right.
Is there a practical, responsible way that you would ever recommend if people come to you with this medical situation that has financial impacts of recommending?
I would always 100% recommend that you speak to an elder care attorney.
An elder care attorney.
One who specializes in the field of aging, because they will know what the Medicaid requirements are and what the avenues are for you in order to kind of where you should put your funds. what you should do with your funds. They would give you options on this is what I would recommend. However, that being said, I would encourage many people in their 70s, 75, depending upon, what medical conditions maybe you already have, that you should have this conversation with an elder care attorney. You want to have this conversation before a crisis happens, because I think you know this, Medicaid has a 5-year look back period.
Thank you, Daniela Masters. And we want to encourage people to turn in to our next program, because we're going to go through the steps of, how you are and what needs you might have to encounter and how to approach that and how you assess that. So
Sounds
thank
good.
you for
Thanks.
being on Frank Presents.
Thanks so much.
And both Daniela and I wish you a great health and a peace of mind in planning for your future. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
This program was made possible by your Franklin friends and neighbors, good folks just like you. Thanks for supporting Franklin TV. And thanks for watching.